When answering multiple choice questions, I look for significant keywords to help clue me in on what's most important in the question and what to look for in the possible answer choices. RICA test makers are notorious for throwing in answer choices which are almost correct or which contain partial information, so it's important to really eliminate those distractors. So I'm going to model how to answer a multiple choice question, my process of doing so. So first what I do is I read the question in its entirety, and then I'm going to revisit the question to highlight keywords or phrases that provide context for the question. So this question says, during a small guided reading group assignment, a second grade teacher notices that one student continues to struggle with oral reading fluency. What intervention strategies would best provide for the needs of this student? So when I am highlighting keywords or phrases, I look for age or grade level of students. So I notice that this is a second grade classroom. I also look to see whether it's whole or small group, and I notice that it's a small guided reading group. I also look for the reading challenge or difficulty that the student's having, and it says that they're struggling with oral reading fluency. And then I'm looking to see if they're looking for an intervention or a lesson, and I notice that it says what intervention strategy. So the fact that it's looking for more than one strategy. With that in mind, I pay attention to those following words and phrases. So it's a small guided reading lesson in a second grade classroom with an student with an oral reading fluency problem, and I need to look for the best intervention strategies. So I make sure that I rephrase the question in my own words. So I know that the question wants me to determine the best intervention strategy for a second grader struggling with oral reading fluency. I then read through the possible answers. The teacher should model reading with expression. Does that deal with fluency? Yes, it does. So I continue reading. In addition, the teacher should provide a quotable text for the student and encourage the child to whisper read and reread the passages to develop automaticity and appropriate phrasing. I also know that decodable text and whisper reading are good strategies for improving fluency. So this may be a good answer choice, but I want to make sure that there isn't a better answer option so I can continue reading the other answer options. The teacher needs to concentrate on using work-related workbook passages in prosody and word recognition skills for this student to become an automatic reader. I stop there because I know that students completing a workbook page will not help with oral reading fluency, so I eliminate this answer choice. Then I go down to option C. The teacher should increase time for read-alouds. I'm not really sure how a teacher read-aloud would provide a student time to practice reading orally. True, teacher read-alouds would provide good modeling of fluent reading, but nothing in the rest of the answer choice has the student doing the actual reading, because they're being, which would provide the student with more exposure to good literature. So I eliminate this choice too. Then I read all the last answer option. The teacher should give time for sustained silent reading, which increases fluency and reading rate when the student is reading books at the student's reading level. I agree that this statement is true, but then again, sustained silent reading isn't providing students practice with oral reading, so I eliminate it too. So it looks like option A is really the best option after all. So I would then select this as my option choice. Let's do one more multiple choice question as a think aloud. So again, I read the question looking for key words. After reading a big book to her students who are gathered on the rug in front of the room, the teacher asks a kindergarten student to find a word on the page of text and to frame that word in her hands. In that sentence, I notice reading a big book, so that's what they're doing. And I notice that she's a kindergarten student. I also notice that the problem is that she uses her hands to frame a whole line of text instead of just one word. I then use these key phrases to rephrase it in my own words. So a kindergarten student while reading a big book, has difficulty ascertaining a whole word from a sentence. And then also they're looking for what kind of classroom intervention. So I need to find an intervention that's going to help that student with that problem. So then I move to the answer options. The teacher, option A, the teacher should engage the student in activities that promote understanding of word. I agree. Some activities that the teacher could use are having the students track print as the teacher reads, counting words, and explaining that there are empty spaces between words. So far this sounds like a good option, and I agree that these interventions would actually help the student identify a word, but I still read for the other possibilities. Option B. The ability to frame a word needs to be practiced by the student in order to foster her understanding of phonics. Some activities that could help this student understand the concept of a word are writing in sand, singing songs, cut and paste activities, and being read to. I actually don't really need to read any further than this first sentence, because I know that being able to identify a word isn't going to directly affect a student's ability to decode, which would be decoding happens in phonics. So I would eliminate this answer option, because just the first part of that sentence is incorrect. On option C, I read a good intervention for the student is to participate in learning center activities that are carefully planned by the teacher. Some learning centers that would benefit the student are writing centers, listening centers, computer centers, and independent reading. So sure, I agree that learning centers are valuable to students, but this answer option is much too generic and doesn't specifically target the challenge the student faces. So I eliminate this option. Then the last option, this student could benefit from additional activities that support these skills. I pause there because I think, but what skills exactly? The answer doesn't seem to say. And additionally, these suggested interventions, letter matching, cut apart sentences, and oral reading activities wouldn't help the student isolate a word. So again, I eliminate option D, and option A is the correct choice.